What's going on, everybody? John Hendricks here with Ross Jackson for another episode of Second and Saints. Ross, how you doing, my man? A little bit, change up the format, but don't be scared. You know, we're not doing this live, but you know, we're just trying to get some things taken care of. But how you doing? How you holding up, man?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Lovely to see preseason football. Even though it was preseason, great to see football. And then great to be back out on the practice field today. How are you holding up? You're man, the one that had to drive.
Oh yeah, I know. So I yeah, I had this notion in my head, and I don't regret it. But like, I'm like, man, I don't know when I'm ever going to be able to just drive from California to Arizona and enjoy the scenery, because I'm like a sap for that type of stuff. And so going out there, I hit like this 60-mile stretch of just straight desert. Like there is nothing. Like there might be some cactus, but there's nothing but desert and all that stuff. I mean, they have mountains and stuff, which is cool to see. I mean, I after the game, I drove back, got in like 2:15 in the morning, got a couple hours of sleep, and so it's all good though. But I mean, hey, look, it was worth it. Preseason game was pretty good. I mean, I think it was. I say pretty good, but you know, I guess let's just start there. Is kind of what was your overall assessment? Because obviously they won. I know who's dominating the storylines. We talked to Dennis Allen on Sunday, just kind of getting his thoughts. But you know, what kind of really stood out and maybe and wasn't so good for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Spencer Rattler was the story, right? I'll go a step further than that. I'll say Spencer Rattler and Charlie Smith were the stories, the rookie heroics that sealed the deal with a game-winning drive and a game-winning field goal. I thought A.T. Perry really helped himself out in that game. I thought that you saw some good stuff from Jake Haener as well. I know Jake Haener didn't have the big heroic game-winning drive, but he had a really nice drive at the end of the first half to get the team into field goal range, to extend their lead a bit. Big 58-yard completion down the left sideline to A.T. Perry. There was a lot of good stuff there. I think the concerns are still on the offensive line, particularly the starting unit. This was a very basic game plan for the New Orleans Saints offense, but they still couldn't move the ball very well against the second string Arizona Cardinals defense. And I think that gave them maybe a little bit of concern. We heard Foster Moreau kind of echo that a little bit, where they could have executed better, all these other things. But you know, it was a preseason game and it looked like a preseason game, but then there were some fireworks and heroics by the end of it. So, you know, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you know, I think it was a little bit disappointing to see the offense, but I mean, honestly, based off of what we've seen in training camp, I don't think it's that surprising in some aspects to see that little bit of a struggle. I think that, you know, not having the success, it's not like the end all be all, because look, this is the first time Clint Kubiak, real game action, and he was up in the booth, right? Like he wasn't calling plays on the sideline, which is a different change. And it's really Andrew Janocko, the quarterback's coach, that's really putting all the information out and stuff, and Clint's calling it. And so it's a new type of way that they're doing this. And I'd never expected perfection. Even if they would have went down and had a successful drive, I wouldn't have been like last year, we'd be like, oh, this is the offense. You know what I mean? Like, because that was what happened last year against the Chiefs. What we thought, you know, a false bag of goods. If this is going to work out, this is going to be good. And so I think you can only obviously improve from there. I'm with you. I think Trevor Penning, the way he played, that's really concerning to me. I thought Taliesin Fuanga held up pretty well. I think that's a good thing for me. I was really pleased with Jake Haener. He led scoring drives, field goal drives. I mean, those things matter. And obviously Spencer Rattler, him coming in, having a touchdown drive on his first series, getting his first touchdown, I think that was great. And then I think he kind of went a little bit flat in between, but really responded at the end with that drive. And of course, A.T. Perry looked sharp. I was really excited to see him. And he drew that pass interference call too on Rattler's drive. So it wasn't just what he put up on the stat sheet, catching all 4 of those targets, but doing that type of stuff as well. And look, I was happy to see the first team defense. I think they played absolutely great. Like Carl Granderson, Willie Gay Jr., guy we've been talking about in camp, and Brian Brzee, like those 3 guys alone just look phenomenal. And of course, Charlie Smith getting to kick the game-winning field goal, getting a game ball from it. They even played like U2 in the Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac paid. He's like, he knew how much he loved U2, and he's like, that's what they started. And then they're like, all right, we got about 30, 40 seconds of this, and we got to the real party and stuff. So, I mean, look, like you said, what more could you ask for? I mean, it was pretty lethargic for a preseason game, but this is what a preseason game is. I mean, we saw some younger guys kind of step up the table, but I'm not mad at what we saw at all.
Yeah, no, not one bit. I think the other thing that it kind of highlights for me too is why the Saints spent so much time working in the week before that preseason game on those end of half drive simulations, those end of game drive simulations, the up tempo work. And we saw that pay off for them right off the bat. Now, Jake Haener, a 58-yard completion down the left sideline of A.T. Perry definitely helped to move the ball. Don't get me wrong, but look, he orchestrated that. Heck of a throw as well. Great job understanding kind of where the pressure was coming from, stepping up in the pocket, delivering really cleanly. Big arm all of a sudden. I don't know if he can do that consistently, John, but if he can, I think that's a whole other, that changes a lot of conversation around Jake. So I really like what we saw there. Good stacking and tracking from A.T. Perry, who ran the route really well. I thought all that was good, but you could feel sort of the composure, the poise for both of these guys in the end of half and end of game situations because of all the practice and all the focus during training camp that they have gotten put into that thanks to this coaching staff.
Yeah, and we've pointed out plenty about, Jake Haener and his ability to do things on the run. And I mean, that play to A.T. Perry, I mean, he was on the run. He was improvising a little bit. And I mean, look what happens. And same thing with Spencer Rattler. I was impressed, like him kind of rolling out and hooking up with Dahl and Holker on that little 15-yard hookup.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Kind of making some things. Yeah, like I was pleased to see that. And the bottom line is we still ain't got a QB2. Like, I get it. Rattler's drives were probably more of the highlights, but again, you don't really get there unless Jake Haener leads the 2 field goal drives. And look, Dennis Allen said that they both performed well, and they both had pretty good stats on it. And I mean, it was kind of dead even. They both had the same amount of completions. Haener had more yards, but Rattler ran into touchdown. So look, I know people are going to go crazy over all of this stuff, but again, we've talked about this being a good problem to have if they can get these young Saints quarterbacks where they need. And of course, it's the sample size that, we know the 49ers aren't coming for joint practices this week. We'll talk about that here in a second. But, we assume that Rattler would get the first snaps over Haener in this game. So he might go up against a bit stiffer competition. And really, it's about what do they do in this next preseason game. Practice is one thing, but, what they do in this next preseason game is obviously going to be something we pay attention to a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think couple things that I would look at for both of these guys that they're probably looking back at on that pass by Jake Haener to A.T. Perry down the left sideline. If he puts that a little bit more towards the middle of the field, that could have been a touchdown, could have been a walk-in. But I get the idea of putting it further towards the outside. You did have the safety coming from across the field that was trying to get involved in the play. So I understand the idea of not trying to throw the DB into the play. That's actually good thinking. But I also loved A.T. Perry trusting that his quarterback, like, he never checked the sideline on the tracking. He just kept his eye on the football, trusted that his quarterback was going to keep him in bounds, caught the football, ended up going out of bounds after the catch. Maybe could have done a little bit to keep it more in bounds, but maybe that's something that Jake Haener looks at and says, dang, I could have done that a little bit differently, but not a huge deal, in my opinion. And then for Spencer Rattler, I think the thing that you're looking for is when they had to burn that final timeout late to avoid the delay of game penalty in that game-winning drive. It obviously all turned out fine. The back shoulder throw to Samson Nacua was a thing of beauty.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
And you love too seeing Spencer Rattler not make the same mistake twice. He had a back shoulder throw to Samson Nacua 2 plays earlier. It was the incompletion, a false start, not a false start. I'm sorry. I think it was it was a neutral zone infraction. And then the one that actually went to Samson Nacua, the first one, he laid it a little bit too far outside and underneath. The second one, right on the money. So good to see him not make the same mistake twice. You watch that drive, the offense, exact same formation every single play. And I went through in my film study And I kind of watched it to remember what Derek Carr was saying about how every play looks the same for the first 4 or 5 steps. That was 100% true for that drive. And it was really cool to kind of see. So there's like some pluses and minuses that are there, but that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the good things to build on, and you're looking for the not so good things that aren't necessarily bad things, but the not so good things to get better at. If you're not looking for those moments, you're never going to get better. So you got to find those. Those are a couple that I'd highlight for those guys. But otherwise, impressive performances from both quarterbacks. And I agree with you. I don't think at this point that there's still separation here at any point, because you still have a lot of preseason left and still a lot of practices left here before you even start thinking about the Carolina Panthers week 1.
Yeah. And Dennis Allen also said some of the, like, because the defense kind of fell off a little bit too after the starters got out. And so talking about how, they had to have some tough conversations and some coaching. People had to have some thick skin, which is good to see, because you can't just go out there and give up plays and stuff and then just not expect anything to happen, right? And I mean, a guy like Rico Payton, he played really well.
Played really well.
Like I think I saw like a 91.6 on PFF grade. Like he was just playing in that. But this is a guy that hasn't practiced particularly well. Like, he just has been picked on as a target. And same thing with A.T. Perry. Like he's had a struggle to start, but then he turned it on. And I like what Dennis Allen said about his willingness to block, and doing some extra things. And we knew he was going to be thrust in the spotlight a little bit more. So like, that was good for me to see. And just some of these guys that are going to get more playing time. And, it's a welcome sight, and I think for them to be able to come out and win the way they did, and just obviously know that there's still a lot that they left on the table, a lot of meat on the bone. It's a good problem to have. And I think that, there's a lot to worry about, a lot to get cleaned out, but that's a preseason game. This is how it always goes. I don't know anybody who's ever played a perfect preseason game in the history of NFL. Like, I'm sure it's happened somewhat, but like, it's just not common, and you got to start somewhere. And you talked about Jake Haener. He played with stitches. He had, I think it's 32 stitches in his face. Like he showed us afterwards, he showed a picture. He had this 2-centimeter hole in his face. Like it was like big business, but he doesn't have nerve damage. Everything should be good to go. Like he shouldn't have been practicing, but dude is a competitor. So is Spencer Rattler. And we've talked about competition. They at least have, I mean, I don't know about every position or every player, but they have, I'd say at least 80 to 90% of this roster is very, 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 very competitive.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think you're seeing competitions all over the place. And then you're seeing the competitions from one position to the other, right? In practice on Sunday, we saw, Kool-Aid McKinstry really wanted an opportunity to defend a red zone fade. And he fought all the way through the ground to rip a ball out of A.T. Perry's hands in the back of the end zone. A.T. Perry was great on the play, but, Kool-Aid McKinstry just fighting through it. I thought Kool-Aid started strong during the preseason game, maybe got a little bit vulnerable once he got moved on the inside throughout, but that was his first ever time really playing in the slot outside of maybe it was less than 30 snaps during his time at the Crimson Tide. And so that was really it was certainly his first NFL action, but his first action on a consistent basis playing on the inside when it comes to football as a whole. And so I think you're looking for those growing pains, and that's fine. That's okay. He's going to continue to get those opportunities there. Alontae Taylor is your slot guy. He is completely bought into that spot here and has been a great leader for these players. And so I think that that's another guy that kind of stood out early, but maybe trickled off a little bit, but I think is still in a really good place and clearly came to practice the next day ready to compete after that.
Yeah, I love the fact it was like just a little like something across the middle, and it could have went for a bigger play, it could have went for a first down, but he darted across and it was only like a 3-yard gain. Like that's the type of stuff that I get excited about. It's like that's a hard play to make, first of all, and that's a hard tackle to make, and for him to just be able to go do that, I'm like, okay, that's what I want to see out of somebody like him, and it was exciting. And so look, there's going to be plenty more to talk about, I'm sure, for the preseason, and of course, against the 49ers, it might hold a little bit more weight, although no joint practices. Kyle Shanahan reached out to Dennis Allen on Saturday and said that they canceled it because there's some injury concerns on their front. They're really nicked up.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's respectful to at least do that. But now the Saints aren't presumably going to have joint practices, even though Dennis Allen kind of like, it's not saying that, we won't try something, but I probably wouldn't expect it, obviously. But, so they're not going to be able to do that this week. It's a bummer, but at the same time, we've seen a pretty competitive training camp. We've seen a lot of good things out there, and so we'll see if, I don't know if they could get the Raiders or the Chargers. And they said the Rams kind of have their own thing, but you never know and never say never. But I would expect them to go kind of full steam ahead. But looking at training camp, look, day 14, a little bit more of a lethargic practice. And I think the first thing that stood out of there was no Spencer Rattler, right? Yep. And he's dealing with, or he had a hip contusion or thigh contusion.
Thigh contusion.
Yeah, thigh contusion, not a hip. Thank you. Yeah. Thigh contusion, which a contusion is a really bad bruise, really is kind of what you're looking at. And he actually wanted to practice, but they're like, no, this is out of precaution. We're not going to put you in. But, he wasn't there. So it was Jake Haener and Derek Carr today. I thought Jake Haener looked really strong as we probably expected him to. He led that game winning or end of game sequence drive, did a really nice job on that. They're also getting a little bit healthier, man. We finally got to see Kendre Miller. He exists.
Right.
He was working off to the side. Him and Demario Davis, Juwan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed was back out there. So was Bub Means, Equinemi St. Brown. So even though it was a little bit more of a lethargic practice, I thought we had some pretty good takeaways. What were some of yours?
Yeah, I think the returns, I think, were one of the big things for me. We also saw Mason Tipton out there observing and everything. He wasn't really like participating or anything like that, but
also
seeing him out there.
Too. Yeah.
Paulson Adebo out there observing. We saw Marshawn Lattimore out there observing again. So it's just good. I mean, you're seeing this team kind of get back to its health. I thought one of the other big standouts from practice, not necessarily participation-wise, but was a roster transaction. Marquez Callaway, the team has moved on from, but they bring back Shaq Davis, which I think is really intriguing. I think Shaq Davis was one of those guys that was really promising last year as an undrafted free agent, got an opportunity with the Philadelphia Eagles early on in the offseason here when the Saints didn't bring him back on a reserve future deal, but now he's back with the team. And so I'm hoping to be able to maybe see him on Sunday. They said they're going to try to get him as caught up with the offense as possible, as quickly as possible, and then maybe get some opportunity to get him out there up against the 49ers. That would be awesome because again, I think you still want, like, the Saints clearly still want that big-bodied guy. Like a lot of the guys that they brought in, Kevin Austin, Shaq Davis, Equinemi St. Brown, Samson Nakua. Like, these are all 6 foot plus big-bodied position type guys. And so maybe a guy like Shaq Davis with another year under his belt and experience with another team, all that, coming back to New Orleans, maybe gets an opportunity to go out there and show out in the preseason like he did last year.
Yeah, and the Saints wanted him back. I mean, that was the thing, but he thought the opportunity was a little bit better for him in Philly, and that's why he chose that, and obviously didn't work out. And I mean, you saw how injured the Saints were. I mean, that just worked out for him, and so now he's back in the mix, at least for now. And so he's got a little bit of catch up to do, but now it's a guy that we looked at him last year. I mean, we thought he just grew on the practice squad. I thought that he's somebody that could have had a bigger role, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason with him, choosing the Eagles, which I understand. Sometimes you got to see what happens and weigh your options. And if Philly offense, I mean, arguably he might've had a better chance to shine and do some things there, but good for him. Definitely think he's a very talented player. And if he can learn the offense and get on the same page with some of these guys, who knows, he might be a good target for Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener in the next 2 preseason games. And so we'll kind of see how that plays out. But obviously no Rattler today. It was just Derek Carr. It was just Jake Haener. They didn't work on any type of special teams like kicking or punting today. They did work on some like gunner stuff. I mean, again, they were in shells, so it was a lighter practice, but they got worked in sevens, and then they did some red zone stuff. And then obviously the end of game simulation. So it was 14-7, 2 timeouts, minute 40. They started on the 30-yard line. I think it was 30 or 35.
35, yeah.
35 was it. And Jake Haener, I mean, look, he had some outstanding hookups. He was able to get there. It had its share of drama at the end of it all and stuff. Like, again, a really nice pass to A.T. Perry that they thought was not going to go. And then a fade route to A.T. that Kool-Aid did a nice job on. But Jake Haener takes it in and he gets the 2-point conversion and the offense wins the day. I mean, it was that drill, that particular time frame was probably the highlight of training camp day 14, but obviously I don't think it's the only thing I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's just where like a lot of the energy really kind of popped off for the day. I think that was kind of the big thing. We saw a couple of other nice plays too. A nice throw from Derek Carr to Cedric Wilson. Those two continue to build their chemistry. We saw that particularly during it was like a corner going towards the sideline. Nice yards after catch from there. Saw a nice pass breakup as well by Rico Payton. So building on that kind of strong play from that preseason game and all. Really, really nice stuff in terms of red zone. We saw Derek Carr and Kevin Austin link up in the back corner of the end zone. Really nice throw, really nice catch on that one too. So, like they continue to work on the kind of these situational things, right? They worked red zone team. They worked those end of game drives, all that, which Derek Carr's drive did not result in a touchdown. He ended up getting the ball to Alvin Kamara on what was like a 4th down and long, but definitely would have been a sack.
Yeah, a Chase Young sack. He would have had back-to-back sacks, actually. I think he had the sack before that on that play.
This is a theme.
He got on Taliesin Fuanga, and then he got the next play where he got a sack too. So Chase Young, like I was happy to see him in the preseason, but he continues to do certain things that just make you just feel like, man, if they can get him through a full season and he plays the way he does in training camp, golly, this pass rush could be something scary. It really could.
I think one of the big things is that he seems to just get it when it comes to the situation. Late downs, he is a mauler on the pass rush. It's like once that down marker turns to 3rd down, it's like he turns Super Saiyan for a second. You know what I mean? It just like he just pumps up out of nowhere and everything. At least KO can. And so he goes after, these quarterbacks with like a whole different vigor than when he's rushing on 1st and 2nd down. Maybe he just knows like, all right, this is an obvious passing situation. I'm going all in and going after the quarterback. But it is a good thing because you want those players that are going to be able to impact it from the pass rush perspective on those late downs and late in games. And I think that the increased rotation of these guys might be able to help with that. We saw more Cam Jordan playing on the inside today, little things like that too. So really excited to see where and how this pass rush continues to develop.
Yeah, and we've pointed this out before. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff to Second and Saints. You can always check our past episodes and stuff. Again, shout out to Bourbon Street Bar and Grill and all the fans that showed up. That was amazing. Really still awesome. Blown away by that. But we pointed this out about Chase Young, the fact that like them catching this doing the neck surgery, the procedure, like I kind of said, I think they got him right. And not that he wasn't, but he suffered a stinger in a game when he was with the Commanders. And that's how long that kind of stuff was lingering for him. And then they finally get it corrected. And I just think that he's been a different person. And obviously it's a big thing that they've done for him in his career and his quality of life. And so, look, I think Chase Young can be something special. And I told you, I said this too. I think Carl Greenwich has got double-digit sacks in him. I also like Brian Brzee. I think Brian Brzee looked really good last night too.
Great call.
Yeah, I mean Willie Gay Jr., Brian Brzee, Chase Young. I mean, like I said, this time has some dogs in it, and there's still that Justin Simmons fellow that's kind of out there. So we'll see how that kind of plays out too. But
he's retweeting Tyron
Matthew stuff. Yeah, the speculation start and the social media is talking, right? Yeah, no doubt, boy. But man, day 14, a little bit less of a practice, like they still got some good work in. I thought it was a little bit slow to start, but then they picked up the intensity and stuff. And now look, they're going to be off on Monday and then they're going to come back on Tuesday, and then schedule may change because practices with the 49ers wasn't until Thursday and Friday. And that game is on Sunday. And so they're going to have some time to figure this stuff out, but bummer. But I think again, you're talking about where they need to correct, because you always hear about it like, oh, we got to look at the tape, we got to clean it up and stuff. But I think something as we kind of close here, it's a little bit shorter of an episode, but something Foster Moreau said is talking about the same thing we keep hearing, one voice, and it's consistent, right? Like with the offense, like that's been the best thing I think to appreciate is the fact that yes, it wasn't like, and he was first to admit, like Foster will be as blunt as anybody can be about anything. Man. Like if something was stunk, he knows. And obviously he said as much, but not executing. But the fact of what he liked about this offense, what he continues to see is it's one voice. And it's like, I know it probably paints a picture from the last few years of like disarray, discombobulation, all this other stuff. But I don't know. It just, for them to keep saying the same things, like I see buy-in, but I also see that, in the long run, if they can keep this up and they can start executing on it, it could mean really good things for this offense.
Completely agreed. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. He talked about the MEs, the mental errors. If they can get past that, and if they can get to, it's about how frustrating like some of those things are and whatever. I think if they can get past that, I think it helps them immensely when it comes to executing the system. And once they're actually running like the full system as well, we saw what I would call less a vanilla offense and more of an unflavored offense entirely in comparison to what we're seeing in training camp. Wouldn't you agree? Like there's one thing about like stripping it down, but because of how much they do with all the bells and whistles in training camp, that offense was like unrecognizable in terms of what they were running. That's not an insult. It's just like they're hiding stuff. Like they don't want it's the gamesmanship of the game and everything like that. But so I would say that like from vanilla to, I don't know, I'll go with my favorite, mint chocolate chip is that offense. What we saw on Saturday in comparison to what it is that this mint chocolate chip offense looks like in training camp was, water, man. Like it just like they didn't give anything away at all. And so I'm really interested to see like when toe meets leather in week 1 going up against Carolina Panthers, just how different that offense looks. And how ready they are for it to look that different if they're not running that during the preseason. I'm curious with the not having joint practices, how that impacts the potential for starters to potentially play again this preseason and how much of the system they end up actually working since they don't get to work it against an unfamiliar defense now with the 49ers no longer doing joint practices.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, I like vanilla ice cream myself, so I might say like
I'm not anti-vanilla.
Unsweetened almond milk. That's probably where I go.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing for me. But like, not that
milk flavored ice cream is what it was. It was milk flavored.
Oh man, yeah, a little bit. But no, you're right. I mean, again, I think the playbook and just to give everybody, and again, as we kind of wrapping up here, like examples, right? The amount of misdirection and the amount of creativity, like they're using Chris Olave in the backfield. They're bringing receivers in the backfield. They're doing a lot of like misdirection. We saw it at training camp today. Like Haener fakes a handoff, and then here comes a receiver for an end around. He fakes it to that, and he has like this quick twitch and got a completion down the field. Like that's the stuff that we see at training camp that we didn't see at preseason. And it's not like we expected that, but that's just one of many examples of what the offense has been toying with and playing with, the misdirection, the motion, the everything that's going to make them a lot more exciting. And so it's coming, but don't judge the sample size. Don't judge a book by its cover from what you saw. Like even Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener ran fairly vanilla offenses or, milk flavored ice cream. And again,
I just want to be clear. That's not an insult about what it is at the Saints field. That I'm just trying to give. I'm just trying to give like I'm trying to juxtapose for those of you that haven't been able to be at practices. The difference between what we're seeing at training camp and what they actually put out there, like it vastly different. Vastly different. Does that mean that they'll be better when they try to field it? No, not necessarily, but it was very, very different for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, what's difficult sometimes is like, we had 13 training camp practices before this. Now everybody got to see. And so now I think everybody kind of like jumps to their own conclusion and everything that we kind of said has kind of gone out the window, which I know it's not the case, but a lot of people are like, well, this is all I see. And so again, keep it tuned to us because we're going to give you all this information. And when you see certain things like, oh, hey, those guys, they said that one thing at one time or something. I mean,
we don't hide anything. Like we don't hold anything back. Like we're trying to make sure that you feel like you were there. So everything we're saying, you've seen, right? before that preseason game.
Yeah, right. And so we'll see again. I think 49ers, you'll see a little bit more. And then in the preseason finale, I don't know. Who knows? I could go either way, right? And it'll be interesting too, because with the joint practices not happening, it begs the question: is if the starters going to play, right? And I think that could be something where they might see some action, maybe one or two drives, since they're not going to be practicing during the week, and so it's going to be some of the many things that we pay attention to this week as we have training camp. But Ross, as we close out and get out of here, man, obviously, what you got coming up on Locked On, and when's the first piece is going to be dropping for LA Sports?
Still waiting on a launch date, but fingers crossed it should be soon for LA, for LouisianaSports.net. Keep it locked to my social accounts, Ross Jackson Nola, and of course here on the show and Locked On Saints. I'll make sure that you know that date when it comes out. Over at Locked On Saints, going to do a short live episode, just kind of recapping the day of practice. But then the Monday morning episode will be all of my film notes from watching the tape from the preseason game. Yes, I'm a nerd. I do film study on preseason games. What are you going to do? Call the cops? What are you going to do? Sue me? I did film study on preseason games. So I'll go through some of those film notes and stuff like that as well. So got a whole bunch of that stuff coming up. What you got coming up over at Saints News?
Yeah, I just continue to grind, man. It's training camp. We know we're in the thick of that, and just putting out a few different things from the game, observations, putting some nuggets in those too. So I not put everything out on social media anymore, just for valid reasons.
John's got good nuggets.
Little things. Yeah, there's always in there. So be sure to go to Saints on SI, their Saints News Network. We're all up there and all that fun stuff. So check us out there. But yeah, that's going to really do it for us. Look, I know I speak for Ross, but I'm more than happy to give Ross the floor here. But again, you guys that showed up to our live show, thank you so much. Like I didn't expect. I don't think he would matter. It would mind if I call him out, but John, he drove up from San Diego. He drove up 3 hours to see our show. Like, that's insane. Like,
incredible, man.
Dude, I mad respect, but like, we're just so blown away that everybody showed up and had a great time. And like, I don't know how many people asked us like, hey, when they play the Chargers, can you come do another show? And then we already got like venues that we can set up and all that. And I'm like, maybe we have to now, but man, I can't say enough good things. Like, you guys made us feel like so amazing, and like,
yeah, man.
Look, we just want to pay it forward, and I mean, that's really all. I just want to pay it forward because we're nothing without fans. You know what I'm saying? So
100%.
Sappy notes, but anyways. So, well, that's going to do it for us. Day 14 in the books. Again, we'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to have our training camp coverage. We'll keep going, keep rolling on, unless the Saints change anything on practice this week. But we'll see how that obviously plays out. Be sure to tune in to Ross Jackson at Locked On. Don't forget to like and subscribe. His information for daily Saints content. This man will get you prepped, ready, and everything else under the sun. And obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe Second Saints. Check out our podcast, and of course that Amazon link there if you want to support the show without having us to do a Patreon or any type of crazy stuff. That would help us out. All the links that we have in our description. But that's going to do it for this episode. On behalf of Ross Jackson, John Hendricks signing out. Y'all have a good one and stay good, people.